It was the kind of summer day where the sun sat high and mean, burning the prairie like it held a grudge. Flies buzzed low, sticking to the sweat on man and beast alike, and even the mesquite trees drooped in surrender. Out near the edge of Colorado territory, where the land rolled dry and flat, and the sky stretched wider than a preacher's promises, a woman rode hard and fast, with tears she wouldn't let fall. Her name was Eloisa May Granger. Folks called her Ellie. She'd once been the talk of Fort Hemming, a rancher's daughter with a fire in her step and a laugh that could lasso the moon. But time has a way of wringing the sweetness out of things, and love, well, it don't always last longer than the bloom on a cactus flower. Ellie didn't look back as she rode away from the small cabin nestled in the brush of Dead Mare Ridge. Inside that cabin, wrapped in a tattered wool blanket on the bare floor, lay a boy. Her boy, no more than 6, scrawny as a fence rail and quiet as a grave. She hadn't even kissed his brow, just left a sack of biscuits, a cracked canteen, and the only thing of worth she owned, a silver locket that hadn't opened in years. That boy's name was Jesse, though he wouldn't hear it again for some time. The wind picked up as the sun dropped lower, kicking dust through the cracks of the lonely place. Jesse didn't cry. He didn't call out. He just sat in the corner where the sunbeam touched the floor, hands in his lap, like a stray pup waiting on a master who wasn't coming back. Now, the plains don't forgive easy. Come sundown, the shadows grew long and lean, and the sounds of coyotes started up like a bad memory. Jesse's eyes stayed fixed on the door. His belly ached something fierce, but he said nothing, just clutched the locket and kept still. Now, about 12 miles east, a man named Bartholomew Cragg was right in the fence line of his spread. Folks round there called him Bart, though he preferred just Cragg. He was tall, with a face carved by sun and wind, and eyes the color of dry sage. He'd been a lot of things in his day, a Union scout, a wrangler, a drifter, but these days he kept mostly to himself and the land he'd fought tooth and nail to hang on to. Cragg had no kin, no woman, and no desire for either. He'd buried too many in his time, and the silence of a lonesome ranch suited him just fine. But fate, that oil trickster, don't much care for a man's peace. It was near twilight when he spotted the buzzards, circling low above Dead Mare Ridge, just hovering in that lazy way they do when they think a meal's fixin' to spoil. Cragg narrowed his eyes, clicked his tongue to his horse, and nudged it toward the ridge. What he found made him sit back in the saddle and let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. That cabin was half collapsed on one side, roof sagged in like a tired mule. No smoke in the chimney, no livestock tied up, just quiet and heat and the stench of old sorrow. He dismounted slow, one hand on his revolver, and eased the door open with the toe of his boot. And there he was. The boy didn't cry, didn't speak, just looked up with those wide, dust-colored eyes, like he was seeing a ghost. Cragg stood there a moment, uncertain, unsettled. He'd seen plenty of children before, orphans and waifs and worse, but there was something different about this one. "Name's Cragg," he said finally, his voice low and dry. "You got a pa around here." The boy shook his head. Cragg frowned. "Ma, then." The shake was slower this time, like it took more effort. Cragg crouched beside him, careful not to spook the kid. He looked at the biscuit sack, the locket in the boy's fist, and the cracked lips that hadn't tasted water in hours. "Well," he said after a pause, "that's a damn shame." He rose, turned, and stepped outside. He didn't make it more than 5 paces before he stopped, cursed under his breath, and turned right back around. "Come on," he said, holding out a rough, calloused hand. The boy didn't move at first. Then, slow as molasses in January, Jesse stood, crossed the floor, and took that hand. Cragg felt it like a jolt. Not the grip itself, it was soft and weak, but the look. That boy looked up at him like he was a lifeline, like he was the last damn ship leaving a flood. And right then, Bart Cragg saw it plain. That boy weren't nobody's burden. He was his second chance. The night Jesse rode home with Bart Cragg, the stars came out bold as brass tacks scattered across a velvet blanket. Cragg kept a steady hand on the reins, glancing down at the boy curled up in front of him. Jesse hadn't said a word since climbing into the saddle, just clutched that tarnished locket like it held the weight of the world. Cragg's horse, a weathered old roan named Amos, picked the trail easy. The wind was kind that night, whispering through the scrub, like it was trying not to wake the ghosts. Back at the Cragg place, the house was modest, 2 rooms, a stone hearth, and a porch that creaked like it was carrying secrets. Cragg stepped down, lifted Jesse like he was made of paper, and carried him through the door. He set the boy on a cot in the corner, the one that had sat empty since, well, long enough. "I reckon this'll do," Cragg muttered. He lit a lantern, fetched a kettle of water, and stirred up the embers in the fireplace till they glowed. Jesse watched with wide eyes, still silent. Cragg tossed him a blanket. "Ain't got much in the way of softness, but she'll keep the cold off. You hungry?" The boy nodded just once. Cragg ladled out the last of the stew from the cast-iron pot, beans and rabbit, seasoned with pepper and luck. Jesse took the bowl with both hands and ate like someone might snatch it away. Cragg leaned against the wall, arms folded. He studied the boy the way a man studies the weather, careful and quiet, waiting for signs. "You ain't said nothing," Cragg offered. "Don't you got a name?" Jesse hesitated, then whispered, "Jesse." "Well then, Jesse." Cragg scratched his beard. "Looks like we're stuck with each other." That first week was slow. Jesse followed Cragg like a shadow, never more than a few paces behind. He didn't ask questions, didn't make noise, just watched. Cragg take him out to mend fence or feed the horses, and Jesse'd pitch in as best he could, even if he was small and green as spring grass. At night, Cragg find him curled up on that cot, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling like he was waiting for the sky to fall. Cragg didn't push. He knew better than most what silence meant. Then one morning, Cragg found Jesse out by the barn, talking low to a stray pup he'd coaxed from under the hay pile. Scrawny little mutt with one ear half missing and a limp in its back leg. "Name him yet?" Cragg asked. Jesse looked up. "Sawbones." Cragg chuckled. "Fittin'. He looks like he's stitched together wrong." The boy smiled. First time Cragg had seen it. That smile settled something deep in Cragg's chest. Trouble always comes calloused, though, and it rode in on a black gelding and a cloud of trail dust one sultry afternoon. 3 men from the Dunlow outfit, slick-hatted cowhands with twitchy fingers and the kind of grins that didn't reach their eyes. One of them was Paxton Dunlow himself, meaner than a wet rattler and just as quick to strike. They pulled up outside Cragg's gate like they owned the road. "Cragg," Paxton called out. "Heard you been harboring strays." Cragg stepped onto the porch, rifle leaning easy in his grip. "You riding all this way just to gossip, Paxton?" The other men shifted in their saddles. One spit. The air turned still. Paxton's grin soured. "That boy. Heard he's from the Granger place. Ain't no kin of yours." "Didn't say he was," Cragg replied. "Well, maybe he belongs to someone else. Might be folks looking to reclaim property." Cragg's eyes narrowed. "He ain't property. He's under my roof now." "Careful, Cragg," Paxton warned, voice low. "You don't want bad blood over a cast-off." Cragg stepped off the porch, slow and steady. He didn't lift the rifle, didn't need to. The set of his jaw said enough. "You ride on," Cragg said. "Ain't no claim here but mine." The men didn't speak. After a beat, Paxton tugged the reins. "This ain't over." He rode off, the others close behind, dust trailing behind him like a bad promise. That night, Jesse asked, "Why'd they want me?" Cragg stirred the fire. "Some men think they can own whatever they lay eyes on." "But I ain't got nothing." Cragg looked over. "You got more than you think, boy." Jesse was quiet, then asked, "Why'd you help me?" Cragg's gaze drifted to the flames. "Saw something in your eyes." "What?" Cragg took a slow breath. "My son died long time ago. Didn't get a chance to fix what was broke between us. I reckon you got the same look." He stood, stretched, and nodded toward the cot. "Get some rest, Jesse. Long day tomorrow." Jesse nodded, lay down, and for the first time, Cragg heard him breathe easy. Out beyond the walls, the coyotes sang and the wind whispered its old songs, but inside, the silence was softer. The summer days rolled on, hard and golden, and Jesse started to wear the dust of ranch life like a badge. He learned to hold a hammer steady, to cinch a saddle without help, and to whistle up Amos from the back pasture with nothing but a sharp call. He weren't just a boy anymore. He was becoming someone with place, with purpose. But as any ranch will tell you, summer has a mean streak. It brings heat that splits fence posts and tempers that snap worse. That August, the clouds disappeared for good, and the rivers ran low. Livestock stood like statues near dry creek beds, and men grew edgy from the thirst. One evening, Cragg and Jesse were patching a section of fence line when the sound of hooves tore up the quiet. A rider galloped over the ridge, reins flapping, his shirt soaked with blood. It was Roy Hanlon, a neighbor 2 spreads east, if you could call 50 dusty miles neighboring. He slid from the saddle, barely standing. "Cragg," he rasped. "They hit us. Dunlow's boys. Came last night. Burned the barn. Took 3 head." Cragg caught him before he collapsed. "Why?" Roy coughed. "Claimed water rights. Said we was talking what was theirs." He grabbed Cragg's collar. "They ain't just after land. They're talking anything they think might be his." "Whose?" Roy's eyes found Jesse standing stiff behind Cragg. "Yours now, I reckon." Later, after patching Roy up and sending him along with water and a promise, Cragg stood on the porch looking out at the horizon, arms crossed. Jesse crept up beside him. "They're coming, ain't they?" Cragg didn't answer right away, just kept his eyes on the dark line of the distant hills. "Yeah," he finally said, "sooner or later." Jesse didn't speak again that night, but Cragg heard him moving around his cot well past midnight, practicing drawing, a stick from a boot like it was a pistol. Come sunup, Cragg pulled an old rifle from under the bed. It was a Henry repeater, worn and smooth, the kind of iron that told stories with every scratch. He handed it to Jesse. "It's too big," Jesse said, holding it awkwardly. Cragg knelt in front of him. "So were your shoulders when you first tried lifting a feed sack. You grew into it." He showed the boy how to chamber around, how to sight clean, how not to blink. "You only shoot when you have to," Cragg said. "But when that time comes, you don't flinch. You breathe. You protect what's yours." Jesse nodded. He didn't smile, didn't tremble, just nodded. 3 nights later, it happened. They came after sundown, riding quiet through the pasture, thinking the dark might hide him. But Cragg had grown up with wolves. He knew the way predators moved when they was fixing a circle. He met him out front, lantern lit. Jesse crouched in the shadows with Sawbones growling low beside him. 5 men again. Paxton in the lead. "You got one chance," Paxton said. "Hand over the boy and we walk." Cragg didn't blink. "You're barking up the wrong tree." Paxton spat. "You don't get to make this decision, Cragg. That boy's got a bounty." "Ain't no bounty for children." "There is," Paxton said, "if the bloodline's what I think it is." That made Cragg tilt his head. "What bloodline?" Paxton grinned. "Granger's kid. Not just abandoned, but heir to a mine claim south of Bisbee. Ellie never filed, but the records in the saddlebag she left behind belongs to whoever holds the boy." Jesse shifted, heart hammering in his chest. He looked to Cragg, whose eyes were hard as flint. "You come here to take a child for silver?" Cragg said low, "We came to settle a debt. You're about to owe more." Cragg raised the rifle, smooth and steady. What happened next came fast and ugly. One of Paxton's men twitched first, gun half out before Cragg's bullet dropped him like a sack of beans. Then came chaos. Muzzle flashes lit the dark like lightning, and the roar of rifles echoed through the canyon. Jesse, still hidden, fired once, just once, and by the grace of steady hands and quiet lessons, that shot found the knee of a man trying to circle the barn. Then it was over. 2 men lay still. One crawled off, screaming. Paxton and one other rode hard, leaving behind their wounded. Cragg stood in the dirt, breathing heavy, blood on his sleeve, and smoke rising from his rifle. Jesse emerged, eyes wide but clear. "You okay?" Cragg nodded. I didn't miss." Cragg looked at him long. "No, you didn't." Later, Cragg sat by the fire, Jesse beside him, silent. "You didn't have to fight for me," Jesse said. Cragg stared into the flames. I didn't have to, but I wanted to. That's what fathers do. Jesse turned toward him, voice trembling. But you're not my father. Cragg met his gaze. Maybe not by blood, but blood's only part of a man. Choice makes the rest. He reached over and squeezed Jesse's shoulder. You're my boy now. That all right with you? Jesse nodded, slow and sure. Yeah, that's all right. The sun rose hot and wide the morning after the shootout. The prairie was quiet again, save for the soft rustle of wind in the sage and the low grunt of cattle stirring from uneasy sleep. Cragg moved slow that day, favoring his left shoulder where a bullet had grazed him. Jesse, though, he moved like a boy grown. He helped patch the fence where it splintered, fed Amos, and even scouted the ridgeline with a pair of old field glasses. They buried the bodies out near the dry creek bed, far enough off the main trail to keep coyotes from sniffing around. Cragg said no words over M, but he took off his hat and stood still for a spell. Jesse did the same. Even devils deserve dirt, Cragg muttered. That night, with the air cooling and the fire burning low, Jesse sat at the small wooden table with a knife in his hand and a plank of pine in front of him. Cragg had shown him once how to whittle, but the boy had taken to it like a hawk to flight. What you making? Cragg asked, setting down a cup of weak coffee. Jesse looked up, eyes steady. A sign. For what? Jesse didn't speak for a moment, just kept carving, slow and sure. Finally, he turned the board around. On it, in rough but honest letters, he'd carved, Cragg and Son, livestock and fence mending. Cragg stared at it, swallowed once, hard. You sure about that? Jesse nodded. You said I was your boy. Cragg rubbed a hand over his face, eyes a little shinier than he'd admit. Yeah, I did. Days passed, then weeks. Life found a rhythm again, the kind that only hard work and wide land can provide. Cragg taught Jesse how to read trail signs, how to dress a wound, and how to handle a bronc that didn't much care for saddles. Jesse asked questions now. He laughed, even quiet at first, but more each day. One afternoon, Cragg took Jesse into town, first time since the trouble. They needed flour, salt, and a new harness. Folks in Dust Creek were cautious at first, eyeing the boy, glancing at the scar Cragg now carried like a medal. Then came Miss Laureen, the baker's widow, round and rosy with hands that always smelled like honey and yeast. She came right up to Jesse and said, Ain't you a tall one now? You Cragg's kin. Jesse glanced at Cragg, unsure. Cragg smiled faint. He is now. That was all it took. Miss Laureen packed him a biscuit and winked. Well, I'm right glad to know it. But peace on the plains don't last forever. One evening, as they rode back from checking water lines, they found a wagon parked by the gate. A woman stood beside it, her dress dusty, her hair tied back, a pistol on her hip and a shadow in her eyes. Cragg knew her before she turned. Ellie, Jesse's mother. She looked leaner, wearier than before, but her eyes still cut sharp. Cragg dismounted slow. Jesse stayed in the saddle. Ellie, Cragg said, keeping his voice level. She didn't smile. Bart. She looked past him, right at Jesse. Hello, baby. Jesse stiffened. His grip tightened on the saddle horn. You come for him? Cragg asked. She nodded. He's mine. You left him. I was scared, she said. Didn't know what else to do. Cragg stepped between them. He's got a life here now. One he chose. I didn't come to argue, Ellie said, but her eyes were hard. He's my son. Jesse slid down from the saddle. He walked past Cragg and stood in front of her. You left me, he said. Ellie knelt. I didn't want to, but I didn't have food, didn't have money. I thought someone find you. Someone kind. Someone did. She reached for his hand. He pulled it back. I'm not mad, Jesse said, but I'm not going with you. Tears welled in Ellie's eyes. You're my boy. He shook his head. I'm his now. He pointed at Cragg, who stood like a rooted tree, unmoving but feeling every word. Ellie stared a long time, then stood, nodded once, and without another word, climbed back into her wagon. She didn't look back as she rode off into the dusk. That night, Cragg carved Jesse's name into the beam above the hearth, beside his own. Just 3 letters. J.S. But it meant more than a claim. It meant belonging. The day after Ellie left, the wind changed. It carried with it the dry scent of mesquite, and something sharper, a feeling, maybe, like the land itself was holding its breath. Cragg knew that kind of wind. It came before lightning struck, before the herd stampeded, or before men made decisions they couldn't take back. But Jesse woke with clarity in his eyes. He worked harder that day, mended the barn door with care, even whistled low as he fed the horses. He didn't speak of his mother again, not in sorrow nor in scorn. He just moved forward. That evening, Cragg poured 2 mugs of chicory brew and set one down in front of Jesse. "You sure you're all right?" he asked. Jesse nodded. "I just needed to see she was real, and that I was done waiting." Cragg nodded, and silence settled between them like an old friend. A week later, a rusted wagon rolled into the yard. It was Mose Tally, the traveling brand inspector and blacksmith, who came through every few months, his horse clopping slow behind him. "Morning, Cragg," Mose called, climbing down stiff. "Heard tell you got a new hand." Cragg glanced at Jesse, who stood tall with a bridle in his hand. "I do," Cragg said. "Best hand I got." Mose eyed the boy, nodded. "Time he got marked then." Jesse blinked. "Marked?" Cragg smiled slow. "A brand. Ain't just for cattle. Ranch hands get one too. Tells folks who you ride for." Mose pulled a heavy iron from the back of his wagon, small, shaped like a C, wrapped around a star. "The Cragg mark," Mose said. "Carved it myself years back. You ready, son?" Jesse looked to Cragg, who gave a slow nod. "I'm ready. They didn't brand skin, mind you." Cragg wasn't that kind of man. No, the mark was burned into the leather of Jesse's belt and the stock of a small rifle, one Cragg had stashed away, for just the right moment. Mose pressed the iron to each, and the sizzle it made seemed to echo across the dry land like thunder. After, Jesse held the rifle, eyes wide. "It's mine?" he asked. Cragg nodded. "Yours. With my name on it. 'Cause it's yours now, too." That night, thunderheads rolled in from the west. Not a storm, not yet, but a promise of one. Jesse lay in his cot, staring at the rafters, the rifle beside him. Cragg sat by the window, lighting his pipe, the scent of tobacco and memory mingling in the air. "Pa," Jesse said quietly. Cragg froze. The boy had never called him that before. He turned, his voice rough. "Yeah, I was thinking, maybe we should fix up the north pasture. Run some wire. Get ready for more." Cragg smiled behind the smoke. "You thinking we'll grow?" "I think we already have." The next few weeks, the Cragg place changed. Not in size, not in riches, but in spirit. Jesse started keeping a journal, writing in the evenings by lamplight. Cragg didn't ask what he wrote, just made sure the lamp stayed lit and the coffee stayed warm. They rebuilt the fence line, stronger this time, built a new chicken coop, painted the barn door for the first time in 10 years. Then came the day they took a new calf from a stranded cow, still breathing, but barely. Jesse stayed up all night with it, wrapped in his coat, feeding it milk from a tin cup. Come morning, it stood on shaky legs and bleated. Jesse laughed for the first time since Cragg had met him, a real one, loud and full. "She's a fighter," he said, grinning. "What do you call her?" Cragg asked. "Ellie," Jesse said. Cragg raised a brow. "I forgive her," Jesse said simply. "But I ain't waiting on her no more." Cragg nodded slow. "That's a man's answer." That summer rolled on like a wagon wheel, rough in places, smooth in others, but always moving. Cragg and Jesse worked from sunup till the stars came out. The land was dry, sure, but it yielded to their labor in little ways. More grass in the eastern pasture, a few strong calves, and wildflowers climbing, the fence posts like they was grateful for the view. Then came the smoke. It showed up one morning, a thin ribbon stretching across the far sky like a finger pointing trouble's direction. Cragg noticed it first while riding out past the north ridge with Jesse. "That ain't cook fire," he said, pulling up on Amos. Jesse squinted. "Brush fire." Cragg shook his head. "Too thin. That's a signal. Someone's burning something deliberate." They rode back faster than usual, minds full of guesswork and hearts braced for something bad. Back at the house, they found a note nailed to the barn door. It was scrawled on a torn feed sack, the letters jagged and angry. "One orphan don't make a ranch. Leave the claim, or we take what's left." Cragg tore it down and stared at it a long while. Jesse stood beside him, silent. "This about that mine?" Jesse finally asked. Cragg nodded. "Most like. You didn't just inherit blood, Jesse. You inherited enemies." That night, Cragg brought out a box Jesse hadn't seen before. It was long, flat, and wrapped in oilskin. He laid it on the table, unwrapped it slow. Inside was a Winchester rifle, polished and lean, with a brass inlay on the stock. Next to it, a badge, old, worn, but still sharp. "You a lawman?" Jesse asked, eyes wide. "Used to be," Cragg said, "before the badge got heavy." He held up the rifle. "This here belonged to the man who taught me how to shoot. He gave it to me when I left. Figured it'd be needed someday." He paused. "I think that day's here." The next morning, they rode into Dust Creek, the badge pinned on Cragg's coat for the first time in 20 years. The sheriff, a tired man named Bartholomew, looked up from his ledger and sighed. "Ain't seen that badge in a while." Cragg tossed the note on the desk. "You see this?" Ollie read it, frowned. "You think it's Dunlow again?" he asked. "I think he's hired folks meaner than him this time," Cragg said. "Jesse's got a rightful claim. That spooks greedy men." Ollie nodded. "I'll back you if I can, but the law's thin these days." Cragg looked over at Jesse. "Then we'll hold our own line." Back at the ranch, they fortified what they could, moved the stock closer to the house, boarded the windows. Jesse took to watching from the loft, his rifle clean and ready. Days passed. The wind shifted. The smoke came closer. Then, one afternoon, they saw riders. 4 of them, dusting up the plain like they meant to make a point. Cragg and Jesse met them at the gate. No words at first, just the sound of saddles creaking and birds holding their breath. One rider dismounted. He was tall, rail-thin, and carried a saber across his back, face half covered in a red kerchief. "You Cragg?" the man asked. "I am. You're sitting on a claim that don't belong to you." Cragg shook his head. "Boy inherited it. It's his. And he's mine." The man nodded like he'd expected that. "We'll be back tomorrow. You got till then." He remounted, and they rode off without another word. That night, Cragg and Jesse sat at the fire, oil lamp burning low. Jesse was polishing his rifle stock, slow and deliberate. "You scared?" Jesse asked. Cragg took a drag from his pipe, let the smoke curl up into the rafters. "Fear's a tool," he said. "Just don't let it drive the wagon." Jesse nodded. "You think we can hold him?" Cragg looked at him, then out the window, where the stars blinked down like old witnesses. "I think we already have," he said. "They came once. We're still standing." He leaned over and rested a hand on Jesse's shoulder. "No matter what happens tomorrow, you ain't alone." The dawn broke red as a wound. Out on the plain, a dust haze hung like breath on a cold morning, even though the air was dry and hot as a cookstove lid. Jesse rose early, no need for waking. He'd barely slept anyhow. Cragg was already outside, boots on, eyes on the horizon. The boy stepped beside him, rifle in hand. "You ready?" Cragg asked, not looking his way. Jesse nodded. "I ain't running." Cragg let out a long breath. "Good, 'cause I ain't either." They'd set up firing points, nothing fancy. Just some crates behind the water trough, and the old wagon tipped on its side near the porch. Jesse took the loft again, with a clear shot down the drive. Cragg kept to the front, near the gate, badge gleaming under his coat. Around mid-morning, they came. Not for this time. 8 riders, moving in a loose line, rifles across their laps and pistols on their hips. Dust followed behind, like a second army. The man with the red kerchief rode front and center again. Only this time, he didn't bother dismounting. "You had your warning," he called out. "Time's up." Cragg stepped out, rifle cradled in his arms, Jesse's dog Sawbones at his heel. "You ain't getting this land. Not today. Not ever." The outlaw looked unimpressed. You and that boy ain't enough to stop us. Cragg's voice didn't rise. Didn't need to. Maybe not. But I'll put a hole in the first man comes through that gate. And the boy'll mark the second. You still feel lucky. Come on ahead. The silence that followed was tight as a drawn bow. Then, somewhere behind the riders, a shot rang out. One of the outlaws slumped sideways in the saddle, fell to the ground. The others turned sharp, startled. From behind a stand of junipers came 5 more riders, approaching at a trot. The lead wore a wide-brimmed hat and a black duster. It was Sheriff Ollymere, and he wasn't alone. Behind him rode Roy Hanlon, still bandaged but upright, and 3 ranchers from across the valley. You boys riding for justice, Ollie called out. Or just for pay? Cragg didn't say a word, just stepped back and let his badge glint in the light. The outlaw leader looked between the 2 lines, Cragg's rifle, Jesse's barrel glinting from the loft, and now 5 more guns coming up the road behind him. He spat in the dust. Ain't worth it. He wheeled his horse. Let's ride. And just like that, they turned. The riders peeled away, not a shot fired. The dust they kicked up was thick, bitter, and full of things unsaid. Cragg didn't move till they were just specks on the horizon. Later that day, after the others rode home and the sun started sliding down the sky, Jesse stood by the water trough, staring out at the gate. They really left. They did, Cragg said. Not 'cause we scared him, but 'cause we weren't alone. Jesse nodded, quiet for a spell. I never thought anybody'd stand for me. Cragg knelt beside him. Son, you stood first. That's why the rest followed. He reached into his coat, pulled out the badge, and handed it to Jesse. Your turn to carry it a while. Jesse held it like it might disappear in his hands. Me, you kept the law today, boy. Not with lead, with courage. The boy smiled, not wide, not loud, but true. And in that moment, Cragg saw not a lost child, not a burden, not a name on a ledger. He saw a man. The days that followed were quieter, the kind that seemed to hum with unspoken thanks. The ranch stood untouched, winding down from its brush with fire. Jesse walked taller now, shoulders squared, eyes sharp. Folks in Dust Creek tipped their hats when he passed, and not just out of pity. Respect, hard-earned and honest. One morning, as the rooster crowed and the coffee boiled low, Cragg laid a letter on the table. Thick envelope, wax seal cracked like old bark. What's this? Jesse asked, setting down his cup. Official deed, Cragg said. The land's yours. Jesse stared. What do you mean? Yours too, right? Cragg shook his head. I added your name beside mine. Means it's ours. And when I'm gone, it's yours alone. Jesse didn't speak right off. Just picked up the envelope, turned it over, and nodded. That same week, a peddler came through with a cart full of odd goods, needles, soap, feed sacks, and a strange roll of parchment maps. Jesse browsed through them and came upon one marked Silver Creek, claim 147A. That's the one, the peddler said. Used to be Granger land. Abandoned after the mother took off, but the claim's still recorded. Jesse didn't flinch. He took the map, rolled it tight, and paid out of his own pocket. That night, he laid it on the table. This was her claim, he said. Cragg nodded. She ever come back for it? Jesse looked away. No, but I don't want it either. Cragg didn't push. You don't owe her nothing, he said. Not anymore. But Jesse shook his head. I want to give it to someone. Someone who'll build something. Not fight over it. Cragg's eyes softened. That's mighty. Jesse grinned. Figure it's time we start thinking about more than holding ground. The very next day, they loaded up the wagon with feed, tools, and Jesse's idea of charity, claim papers, signed and sealed, ready to hand over to the town council. That trip to Dust Creek was different. Jesse rode out front. He didn't follow. He led. When they arrived, folks gathered quick. Word traveled faster than boots in that town, and soon the mayor, schoolteacher, even old Miss Lorene from the bakery had showed. Jesse stood on the saloon porch, map in one hand, the deed in the other. This claim belonged to a woman who gave me life and then left, he began, voice strong. But I found something better here. A name, a home, a man who stood beside me when no one else did. He looked down at Cragg, who just gave a nod. I'm giving this claim to the town, for the school, for anyone who needs starting over. There were murmurs, then applause. Even the mayor took off his hat. You got a good head on your shoulders, Jesse, he said. And a good man beside me, Jesse replied. Back at the ranch, they found the dog asleep on the porch, the cattle grazing lazy in the dusk light, the kind of peace most men spend lifetimes chasing. Cragg poured 2 mugs of cool well water. To the boy who became a man, he said. Jesse held up his mug. To the man who showed him how. They drank, and the prairie, wide and wise, held them both in that long gold light. July came hot and headstrong, beating down on the rooftops and drying up what little green was left on the range. The cattle took to standing in the shade of cottonwoods, and Cragg and Jesse spent their mornings drawing, water by hand, moving slow as molasses. But the land, for all its stubborn heat, felt alive. It buzzed with quiet prosperity, the kind not made of coin or titles, but of earned trust in things well tended. One afternoon, they heard a wagon rattling up the trail. Cragg went to the porch, rifle at his side more out of habit than worry. Jesse followed, thumping the brim of his hat. The wagon rolled to a stop. It was Ellie. Again. Only this time, she weren't alone. A man rode beside her, tall, proper-looking, city-cut clothes. The kind of man who carried papers and promises, but not a lick of sweat on his collar. Cragg, Ellie said. Jesse. The boy's name still held weight on her tongue. Jesse nodded, neutral. Ma'am. The man stepped down, offered a thin smile. My name's Walter Avery. I'm with the Federal Claims Office. Miss Granger here tells me she's rescinding her maternal claim to the Silver Creek deed in exchange for oversight rights. Cragg's brow furrowed. Oversight. She wants to ensure its use is dignified. Jesse crossed his arms. It ain't hers to dignify. Walter glanced between them, uncertain. Cragg's voice cut through like a branding iron. You come here with paper, trying to overwrite what blood already wrote. But that boy, he pointed at Jesse, he gave that claim away for nothing. For the sake of folks who needed it. That deed's clean. And this land here. He stepped off the porch. This land ain't negotiable. Ellie looked older now. Not in years, but in weight. Like she'd been carrying regrets up a long hill. I was wrong, she said. Back then. About him. About you. Cragg nodded, firm. You were. She stepped forward. But I'd like to see it now. What you built. Jesse looked at Cragg, who gave the faintest shrug. The boy, no, the man nodded. All right, but you come in as a guest, not as someone with a say. They walked the pastures together, Ellie, Jesse, Cragg, and the city man trailing behind like a shadow in patent boots. Jesse showed her the coop, the troughs, the brand mark on the barn. When they reached the sign over the porch, Cragg and Son, Ellie stopped. You carved that, she asked. I did, Jesse said. She reached out, traced the edge of the letters with one hand. Then I reckon I don't belong here, she whispered. She turned, face soft, eyes wet. I just wanted to see what I missed. Jesse didn't speak. He just opened the door. Come in, he said. Stay for supper. That evening, they ate in quiet, the kind that ain't awkward, just full of memory. Ellie helped slice bread. Cragg poured strong coffee. Jesse carved meat with the same steady hands that once trembled in a dusty corner. After dinner, Ellie stood. I'll be leaving in the morning. But I thank you. Jesse looked up. You don't have to leave so soon. She smiled, tired. I do. But now I leave knowing you're all right. She turned to Cragg. And that someone better than me raised him right. Outside, as stars came out and crickets began their nightly hymn, Jesse and Cragg sat on the porch steps. She meant it, Jesse said. Cragg nodded. She did. But I still feel hollow. Jesse nodded. Cragg leaned back, loud of breath. Some things leave a space behind. You don't fill it. You just build around it. Jesse looked up at the night sky. I think I did. Cragg smiled. You did. Summer waned slow, like a song fading out on the last breath of a harmonica. The nights grew longer, the stars more vivid, and the air held a whisper of cool, as if autumn was leaning in, listening to the story the land had been telling all along. Jesse had taken to riding out alone some mornings, just him and Amos, the old roan now more companion than beast. He'd ride west past the fence line, where the grasses grew taller and the sky opened up like it had secrets to share. He didn't say where he was going, and Cragg didn't ask. Some things a man does in quiet. One of those mornings, Cragg sat on the porch, cup of coffee in one hand, a letter in the other. His eyes took a while to scan it, age slowing him down some, but the words were simple enough. Sheriff Ollie Muir had decided to hang up his star, and he wanted Cragg to take it up again. Cragg read the letter twice, then folded it and set it on the table. He didn't say yes, didn't say no, either. That evening, Jesse returned, riding easy. Cragg waited till he unsaddled. "You keep riding west," he said. "You looking for something?" Jesse smiled faint. "Just looking. Thinking. Wondering what else is out there." "You fixin' to leave?" Jesse didn't answer right off. Just leaned against the hitching post, arms folded. "I'm fixin' to build something. Maybe on the next ridge over. Maybe with my own hands." Cragg nodded. "You're ready." Jesse looked up, a little surprised. "You think so?" Cragg stood, stretched slow, back popping like old floorboards. "I know so. You carry yourself like a man who's found his trail." Jesse smiled. "I'd still come back for supper." "You better," Cragg said with a chuckle. 3 weeks later, Jesse drove in a load of lumber, tied it off out past the west field, and began hammering posts into the earth. It was hard work, lonesome at times, but he never once faltered. Sometimes Cragg would ride out and hand him water. Sometimes he'd just watch. And then one day, Jesse drove the last nail, set the gate upright, and hung a small, hand-carved sign above it. It read J. Cragg Homestead. Cragg rode up slow, stopped beside him. "You built it." Jesse looked proud but quiet. Had good teaching. They stood there a long while, father and son not by blood, but by every other measure that mattered. That fall, the town elected Cragg sheriff again, on the condition he'd keep his badge in a drawer unless truly needed. He agreed. Mostly. Jesse's place became known for takin and strays, orphans, wounded animals, folks passing through. He didn't talk about where he came from, but everyone knew. They knew he'd been left with nothing, and found everything. Years later, when Cragg's knees finally gave up and his bones grew too tired for saddles, Jesse moved him into the new homestead. He gave him the room with the big window, the one that faced the hills. And every evening, they'd sit together on the porch, cups in hand, dogs snoring at their feet. The prairie sang, and they listened. And that, partner, is the end of our trail. You rode the whole way with me, through dust and fire, silence and storms. You followed a boy who was left with nothing, and a man who gave him everything he had left. Some stories don't need silver or gunfights or glory, just two souls who choose each other and make a life out of that choice. Now go on. Tell someone this tale, or better yet, live one worth telling. The end.